So that's my dad with a little smirk on his face, and that's all for good reason because he just saw his closet for the very first time in a whole new light. Now, if I could take you back a little bit in time, back in September, I went to their house and I took some measurements of the closet. By now, it might be enough time that they would probably forget what was going on. Well, at least my stepmom. What I wanted to pull off was something that I couldn't do. I had no way of getting the two out of the house without them knowing. So what I had to do was work with my dad and let him know what was happening. And all he knew is I was coming there to do some work in the closet, but he had no idea what it was gonna look like. So in a perfect world, I would have loved to get there about 6 a.m. in the morning and get started, but we had to treat the day like a normal day. So I packed the night before and I was on my way the next morning. And one thing I wanted to mention is I only had 2 days to do this entire job. This is probably one of the very few times you've seen me out of my environment. I'm now at my dad's house and today I'm gonna start the installation. This is the space I have to work with and I need to declutter this, and I couldn't have anybody else do it because I didn't want to give any signal. Now, in my opinion, there's a lot of unnecessary things that are in here that doesn't even belong in a clothing closet. But who am I to judge? The number one thing I had to do was begin to move obstacles out of my way, and the first thing was this door. Now, at first I was trying to avoid messing with the hinges, but eventually I took those out to prevent any accidental injuries. And because I'm recording the process, I need to get rid of this old light so I can get as much light as possible in this room. So I now have light and it's time to get this party started. After about 45 minutes time, I finally got the closet all cleared out and almost to a blank slate. The next thing I had to do was rip out the shelves and repair the wall. And I can tell you that this closet has seen better days. Now, my dad's not the most handiest guy, so I don't know if he hired anybody or he did this himself. Okay, so the screw part, I believe he did himself, but I'm not sure on who put this on the wall because there are nails literally going through these 2x4s right into the stud, and I know my dad don't have a stud finder. A part of me wanted to just rip these shelves down, and on camera it probably would have looked cool and a bit dramatic, but I also had a timeline I needed to respect, so I had to do this carefully. The next thing I did was pull down the AC vent, gave that a quick coat of white paint later, and I also cleaned the ceiling. And once I was cleaning the ceiling, it wasn't as bad as I thought, so I kind of bought some time there of not having to repaint the ceiling. Now actually I brought flooring as a backup. I was planning to do that last if I had time, but after looking at this floor, there was no way I was gonna leave this floor in here, so I had to rip it up. And if I was removing the baseboard, this would have been a good time to remove the baseboard. Now I actually started 2 hours later than I anticipated, so I had to save time wherever I could, and that's why the baseboard went untouched. Plus, it's a closet. Now the next thing I had to do was remove all the carpet tacks going around the perimeter. After patching all the holes in the wall, it was on the painting. At this point, I'm really loving the progress I was making, and everything was just starting to come together. So as I'm painting the trim, I'm like, oh, look, old Pops back in the days. And then I looked up and I'm like, what happened here? So this clock I gave my dad a while back, which was one of my earlier projects, not only did he hang it sideways, but he also wrote numbers on it with a Sharpie. Really? I mean, the numbers ain't even straight. Good job, Pops. So when I paint, I like to go with a flat paint on the wall, and for the trim and the baseboard, I like to go with a high gloss paint. And at this point, I realized I brought the wrong paint from my house. I grabbed a flat paint and I was not happy about that because that meant I was gonna have to repaint the baseboard. Next up, I'll switch my attention to putting down the underlayment for the floor. You definitely want to use this. Not only is it almost like a little foam pad, but it also blocks moisture from transferring from the concrete to your floors. If you've never done laminate before, I'll cover this in greater detail in a future video. And the concept behind this is there is no glue or any kind of adhesive involved. The floor is literally just floating on top of this. The circular saw jig was a lifesaver, and if you didn't see that video, go ahead and check that one out. And since this is a small space, I'm gonna go ahead and measure all of the pieces, cut them down to size, and get those all pre-cut before it gets too dark outside. And once the flooring was complete, it was on to the quarter round. This should hide the gap between the floor and the baseboard. Had I felt there was enough time, I would have removed the baseboard and installed a floor, but more than likely I would have replaced the baseboard with a 6 to 8 inch baseboard. I'm also using a pin nailer which used very small hole inside the quarter round, and this will make it easier to paint over. If you're using, say, an 18 gauge brad nail, those will leave a larger hole in the quarter round, which you can then use caulking, or you can use spackle to fill in those. And at this point, the floor is done. It's late into the night. I got some sleep, got back up at 5, and now I'm back at it again. And courtesy of Modular Closet, they helped me out with the layout in this space. And with these being modular, you can simply lay out your closet the way you want that to look. Now they're packaged extremely well, and what I like the most is that these are plywood. And they're rather simple to install and actually set up. Now I did use my drill, which later on I switched to my screwdriver because I realized with the drill I couldn't get it down to a low enough settings. This drill is like a little bit too powerful, so I then used a screwdriver for the majority of this assembly. And this is pretty much the only tool you need. You can also download the PDF instruction ahead of time so that you know what you need for the installation. This actually helped me out a ton, so I knew which tool to bring, at least for this part of the installation. Now each modular cabinet is held together with dowels and cam locks. If you've ever assembled anything, then more than likely you've seen these before. In the past, I've tried it both different ways, putting in the cam nut and then the cam screw first. And for me, either one works, but I always like to go with the one where you just place all the cam nuts in the holes and then make sure the arrow on them is facing the direction of the cam screw. And once you have everything lined up, go ahead and tighten up the screws. There was a lot to assemble, from the towers to the drawers, and I stayed focused on that until I got everything completed. I could have installed the closet rods last, but I wanted to make sure that I got as much done before I could move on to the next task. The next task was a little more time consuming than I hoped for. I used masking tape to wrap around the entire room, which I then used my tape measure and also a level to mark a line going around at 82 inches high, which is where I placed the top of each modular system. Now I had the perfect tool for this job, my laser measure, and that was one of the tools I forgot. I then brought all the pieces in the room just so I can get a visual on what this would look like once they're on the wall. This way I'm able to visualize everything and then think of a way that I want to approach it. I was able to use the workbench and some additional pieces to hoist the tower on top of it, and once I lined everything up and confirmed that it was level, I could then go ahead and screw it in. In an ideal world, you'll want to mount these into 2 studs, but of course there are times that things are just not ideal. And this was the only of the larger towers that did not have 2 studs which lined up with it. So I made up for that by anchoring all the cabinets on the back wall together as one unit. And I was quite pleased that I brought my clamps because this actually helped out. And at this point in time, all the towers are installed. And now it's on to installing the drawer slides. And look who just showed up and ready to explore. One cool thing about these drawers is that the drawer box itself is pre-drilled for 1-hole and 2-hole pull handles. Just decide on the option you want, use the pre-drilled holes, and then add your hardware. Unfortunately, one of the pull handles was missing from the shipment. I contacted them and they got me one out in like 3 days. Actually, they got me 4 of them. Not sure what I'm gonna do with the rest of them, but I'll pass those on. I then went on to replacing the light fixture with something that I felt blend in a little more with the space. As time was running down, I had to kick it into gear and install the transition piece right where the laminate floor met the carpet. At this point, me and my dad been texting back and forth, and I'm telling him I'm close, and I wasn't sure if he was on his way. So right at this point, the closet's already staged, and now I'm just putting the finishing touches on the baseboard. And I managed to get everything done except for the framing going around the door jamb. So that meant I was out of time, and I managed to do everything except painting the door frame. And I really didn't want to paint that at that point because it was so late, and I didn't want anybody to come in, lean on it, and get paint on them. So I was happy with where I finished at, but obviously I didn't get to the point that I really wanted to. And right around that time, I got a text from my dad, and they was about 5 minutes away. So I had to relocate my vehicle so everything just looked normal. So as I'm waiting in one of the guest room, I finally hear them making their way into the house, and I can hear my dad. He's ahead, he makes his way down the hallway, he's pacing, he gets there, and he was a bit impatient to get in there and see what was going on first before he can show it off. Look at him.
Come here. Happy Christmas.
I'm not sure what that is. I don't know if it's wow or is it a where the hell is my stuff? Your guess is as good as mine.
What? What's that? How you got all this stuff?
Oh my gosh.
Oh, that's Mama.
What? Merry Christmas. Look at the floor. That's a Christmas there. Merry Christmas. Boy. What y'all think? Boy, I tell you, boy. But I like, that's the beauty. That's a beauty, boy.
I like that.
Man, Jesus. I got to put some Facebook, boy. That's why.
Yeah.
Jesus. And boy, this. Wow.
Look nice.
What's my shoes? I just
Oh, I thought you bring me down.
Hey, you ain't keeping my shoes.
So listen here, I don't know what I owe you, boy. But the thing is, the thing is that we want to try to get the baby home. Boy, that's awesome.
Obviously, if you walk into your house and you just see a dramatic change like that, maybe you don't know how to react. But I really hope they like the change, and hopefully this is a starting point for them. And I did let them know that if you guys want me to come back here and do any other work in any space in this house, you have to absolutely declutter and get rid of a lot of the stuff that you're not using. And if you're still hanging in there with me, here's the reveal on the closet. I will give you guys the price and the breakdown at the end of the video, so stay tuned for that. Now it is fair to say that I could not have pulled this off without the help of Modular Closet, so check out their link down in the description and see how their solution can help you out. And hopefully I'm not forgetting anything, but here's the cost breakdown on this project. $1,400 for the towers, $45 for the underlayment, $22 on the floor, $22 on the transition piece, another $20 on the quarter round mold, and another $60 on the pendant light, finally $65 on painting, and that should bring the grand total to around $1,634. Thank you for tuning in, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Be sure to comment down below, let me know what your thoughts are, and also if you're new here, consider subscribing. I'd love to have you. That is it for this one, guys. I'm Glenn, and I'll see you next time.